Probably like. Yeah. So I don't.
Still there.
Yeah.
Gonna get started, everybody? Let's just change the numbers. Wow. Wow.
The only thing that would be that more experience if you had the.
Yeah.
I just told him we need to get him a
Yeah, I
gallon.
need to go. All right, so welcome everyone to the selection meeting of the ErieNet Local Development Corporation. Today is June 17th, time now is 2:03 p.m. I'll take a quick roll. Jason Keating. Here. Mark Purnell. Here. Legislator Mills. Here. Legislator Gilmore. Here. Jeremy Toth. Here. Dan Castle. Here. Mike Breeden. Here. Mark Fire. Here. Elizabeth Freeze.
Here.
Nolan Skipper.
Here.
Let the record show that John Spears is absent and not represented here today. We also have with us Matt Kreider from ECC, Andrew Polinsky from Harris Beach. Anybody online that we need to acknowledge?
No.
Yeah. All right. With that, we do have quorum in the room. On to number 2, there is no report of the chair, so we can go right into agenda item number 3 of the executive director's report.
We go back to number 1.
Minutes. Oh, sorry. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes from the May meeting. Discussions, motion by legislator Gilmore, second by Mike Breeden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Now we can.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. This is a big group today. So a few things. Matt will give the kind of the construction and make ready update, which is moving in the right direction, which is it's good news. I can't remember dates, but last time we talked about how we applied for the Connect All MIP Phase 4 grant. Since then, we've been awarded a conditional. Were we awarded that at the last meeting? We were, okay. I think maybe it was right before. They have obviously given us some questions that we had to answer, which we've done. We had a meeting with them. It was, if I was to rank the meeting from 1 to 10, I would give it a 5. I don't even know how to put this in words, but it was almost like the very first question they asked us was, why do we think we're eligible for the grant? So that was an odd question, asking that after we applied. We had submitted questions ahead of time. We basically spelled out what we'd be applying for. The answer back to us was yes, those qualify. We were sent after the meeting that we had with them, we were sent a link to the website with a list of eligible community anchor institutes. We've never seen this list before.
These are eligible addresses defined by the FCC.
Mm-hmm. Which we believe were not included in the original grant application. It appears that this list was probably created post that submitting the grant, or we're not 100% sure. So the eligible addresses that they're telling us we can connect are mainly in the rural areas, and are not, of course, any of the ones we applied for within the grant, even though we had specifically referenced that we'd be doing that. So we're working through that right now. We have requested to Connect All that they allow us to connect to our community anchor sites. We believe that they need a definition of the Treasury, Federal Treasury Department's community anchor institutes, which have to do with health education and one other that I always forget. But regardless, most of ours are police stations, fire stations that obviously have to do with the health and safety of our community. So we redefined that. We asked for that to be reconsidered for the City Buffalo sites, as well as Lackawanna, the ones that we mainly asked for, as well as the Erie County sites.
Erie County 911.
911, these apps.
Radio too.
And then we also expressed to them that we'd be willing to also connect the other approved CAIs that they had sent over in that list. But that would obviously require additional funding. But we believe we'd be able to do that as well, which would help ErieNet in general as well. So We have not heard back. I sent a follow-up email this morning. We submitted those a week ago this past Friday. We haven't heard back. That can go two ways. They either don't want to fund it or they're trying to figure out a way that they can fund it. And so I'll update you as I find out. But that's kind of where we're at.
They encouraged us to fund. They knew they were running. We were on only 2 applications. Right?
We were one of 3. I did find out there was another one. But yes, we were one of 3 applications. I asked STN how their meeting went and they said it went very well, but they were asking for pretty much identical of what they submitted with their phase 1, just a different area. So, and they're obviously in a different phase. And this was supposed to include middle mile. So it's just kind of, I don't really know how to articulate what's happening because I don't really know myself, but we're working through it and we'll keep you guys up to date. Meanwhile, we did meet with Lackawanna, who's included in the grant. We met with the mayor, and that meeting went very well. They're very interested in connecting, but of course we included them in the grant. And so they were meeting with the governor's office a couple days after we met with them, and they were, you know, I gave them talking points to express the need for this type of grant. So I'll keep you updated. The real property tax legislation, that's also been wild. So if you recall, we had submitted legislation, or we didn't, I'm sorry, the county had a lobbyist on our behalf, and Senator Ryan and Assemblyman Rivera had sponsored a legislation to be approved to exempt, originally all open access municipal networks from real property tax. That went through last minute, but it was then put through as just Erie County only, and it had a sunset clause. So I don't remember that piece. Then the governor vetoed it on Christmas Eve because of miscommunications, not on our part, not involved, but not on the part of people representing the county. So they were working through that language and had agreed upon with the governor's office specific language that would then put it through the legislative process again. It seemed like it would go quite quickly. Of course, that did not happen. There was some pushback, Spectrum ID got involved again. So the update is there's an alternative bill that seems to, well, some tax people believe that it covers municipal open access networks such as ErieNet and fiber, I should be more specific, that it includes fiber. And some people, including our attorney, Andrew's here, believe that it excludes it. And so that passed to the Senate. I have not had an update on how it went with the Assembly, which I believe last day might be today. And so we're kind of waiting to see if it did include us. It was actually an update to a previous bill that mandated ISPs pay this real property tax. It updates that so that they're excluded from paying this property tax. But the legislative directors with Sean Ryan's office and John Rivera's read it as it is including fiber, that we would be exempt. But Andrew and I kind of also agree with Andrew, believe that it is excluded. So we're waiting to hear an update from Vic on that. But I just wanted to let you know that we're working through that. We do have an alternative plan, which we 100% can do. It's just time consuming, and we were hoping to have a sweeping bill that would just exclude us so that we don't have to go into this exhaustive process of going to every town. We still might be able to avoid that with legislation that we put through the county. That would be kind of like an overall Erie County bill that would exempt us. So we're working through it. We're not super worried that we're going to be subject to real property tax, but we're still obviously going through that. So I just wanted to give you an update on it. Bailey Avenue Rapid Transit update. So I don't know if some of you saw in the news that that project in general was, it was being reported that they were losing the federal funding for that project, which I was led to believe was happening. But they reached out to us and wanted to have an update meeting. And the first question I asked are you losing your federal funding for this project? And they believe that they are not. And so this is an FTA. Yeah, thanks. So they reached out to us. They put together a study that we were reviewing with them that shows the different connection points that they would like to connect with ErieNet throughout. I think there's 13 stations that they want to connect. And they are working with us, we're working with them actually to put together a projected amount of what that would cost the project. Then they'll do an analysis to see if that is something that they're interested in, but they do want fiber. They want to partner with ErieNet. And so right now we owe them next week or so a proposal.
Well, they owe us their maps still.
Oh,
And once I have those, I can turn those around.
okay. I didn't
But yeah,
realize you were
we'll
reading.
take that together.
Maps from the NFTA
Yeah, the-
of their location.
where their actual 13 stations are. And they had already had an outline of our network. And so they already made some suggested connection points. So I'll have my engineers vet that.
But this all assumes that the FES money is still in place for the project goal.
Which they think is, and they're moving forward with the project. They have consultants who have reached out to us as well, so I think they sent us that.
Okay.
Check that. So that's that. Also, when you came in today, hopefully you took the extra sheet of paper. That's the conflict of interest forms that you need to sign. If you want to just sign them and leave them with us, we'll take care of it. But I do need to get those signed today. Before you go, and that just reminds me, was I gonna ask about training? If you haven't done your training, your board member training for this board or any other board that you're on, just make sure that you're keeping track of when yours is due. We can look if you need to know if you still need to do 2025.
Do it yearly, or once you're done, one
No,
done.
it's for a term.
Oh, it is for sure?
Yeah, so typically, for the purposes of ABO training, it needs to be completed within 1 year of your appointment to the board. And then thereafter, it's a best practice, made by the ABO that you retake the training once every 3 years. So we always recommend that just to get up to speed on new practices, that sort of thing. But typically that training just needs to be completed within 1 year.
Okay. So really the only one that would affect them is John and Nolan.
I don't think I've done
Yeah,
it.
as soon as it-
Okay.
Martha, did you guys say?
I'll get them.
I don't think so.
We'll send out the link for everybody.
Yeah, they do them like once a month.
And you may have done it for another board. Are you still on other boards?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I haven't, I do a lot of advising of nonprofit boards, but I.
Okay. We'll send the link out and we'll get that done.
Thank you.
And then you won't have to do it for 3 years. I was thinking it was yearly for some reason like that. So you guys, thanks, Nancy.
That would be a very good practice.
That would be a very good,
Yeah.
we only want to be back, not very good. And that's it, so Matt?
All right, well, let's start with permitting. We have 176 make-ready applications to get on utilities. Every one of those applications pretty much results from either needing a city, town or city permit, a state permit, throughway permit, or a county permit. So we have hundreds of these permits that are in play. We are building in the city of Buffalo, and once we get the city of Buffalo IRU agreement straightened out, and we're, I think, days away from that, we'll do a big push to get all of the city routes submitted. Nolan, it had been going well with the city permits. They had been turning around pretty good. And the last couple of weeks been very quiet. And I don't know if there's an issue involved,
No.
but
Take off my board hat, put on my
Yeah,
city hat,
yeah.
we'll jump back on.
And so,
That-
you could look into that, because there's several key ones that we need to be able to pull over to the public safety building on 45 Elm Street. Some
Yeah.
other stuff that we're ready to do now in June and July.
Sounds good.
Likewise, we have to get our contractors licensed. CLW is our main fiber contractor. We're trying to get them in on the May license board approval. There was some paperwork issues. We missed that. So, and I'm not sure when the June one is. Last May was like on the 22nd or the 23rd of May. So I'm assuming the one in June is coming up soon. So we've been working with Judy Porto on that. And hopefully we can get CLW signed off in June. She just got back to us and said it's a light, what you call it, city light construction,
Commercial.
light commercial license. So, and they've already applied for that last month. It's just a matter of getting the insurance certificates, I believe. County permits are going well. Like I said, the DOT, we have somewhere between 70 to 90 DOT permits. It's going better with the DOT. They have a rather exhausting process. There's a 4-step review. So we met our engineers, DOT, have an understanding of what we're trying to do. So it's going better. They're turning around better, but we still need that to continue to improve. The good news is those permits are being released. Our make-ready construction crews are very busy across the county. So each week we clear more and more poles that we're able to then issue work orders to CLW. And I think CLW now at this point, at the end of this week, will have constructed somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 miles of fiber optics, and we're releasing another 16 miles. Or we already have released another 16 miles, and there'll be more being released later this week and next week. So it's beginning to accelerate. So our goal right now is to keep 2 crews from CLW busy. We have to clear the make ready so that those crews can stay productive. And we are. Want to take those two crews and accelerate to 6. So that's the way these projects work. Once we get through the make ready gauntlet, fiber comes relatively quickly after that. So just now realizing some of that. And our main corridor right now is still Springville out to West Seneca. But also our underground is picking up speed. And we're waiting on our ribbon cable. If you remember back in April, did a resolution to buy some more to specialized cable. That it should have left the factory last Friday. I happened to pass a flatbed truck with 4 fiber reels heading west to Buffalo on the meeting today. So I called Graybar to find out when they expect our fiber, because I don't want them to surprise us like last time. So, so once that fiber comes in, that's what we're going to pull over to 3. It'll bring the Raft building over to 350 Main, and also be the fiber we need to pull to 45L. And then from L, we'll head, what is that? West or east to Cheektowaga. East to Cheektowaga, pick up the fire training academy. And also the convention center is at play. So there's a bit of downtown construction. I thought it was going to happen in June with the fiber delivery getting put off last Friday. Most of that work will be in July.
Do you think the downtown work will be in July?
Yeah. And again, we need a couple of city permits to clear in order to get our trucks on the road. It's mostly underground, but you still got vehicles and people, the sidewalks, so permits apply. So we talked about the Connect All. There's a write-up in my report too, if you want some details on that. We're getting very close with the managed network services. We have a purchase order in play for the Erie County equipment for 71 sites, 31 PSAPs of towers, and the rest are sewer and county facilities. That, if we hold that PO, that equipment ships late August, they're saying. And so, they would invoice late August and we would have mid-September, the bill would be due. If we don't feel comfortable with that, you have until the 1st of July to cancel. NetSync has asked us to tell them yes or no by the 25th of June. So,
The benefit of us keeping this PO is that it's maybe tariff funding, or pricing, and so it could be a difference of a couple $100,000 if we do get tariff. So
What happens if we gamble and we're wrong? What do we do?
so if we're not comfortable, and
Well, I'm saying like if we're comfortable with what, then it just still goes the wrong way.
oh, you mean check with the tariffs?
No, I mean, this is related to,
So,
you mean if
If-
something happens with the managed network service?
yeah,
Oh. I don't see that happening, but we don't have our contracts in place. So it's
They
a,
don't have an IRU with the county yet.
right, so it's a little ready, fire, aim. The ideal situation would be ErieNet gets its agreement with NetSync.
Mhm.
That's been drafted. Both attorneys are reviewing red lines. And then when that contract's in place, we work with the county to secure the county's agreement with ErieNet. Then we would issue PO.
yeah, I guess my question is, I understand the normal timeline, and sometimes you have to do things out of order. What's the liability or the concern with doing this out of order that brings up the question
The
of?
liability would be if, for whatever reason, Mike pulls the plug and doesn't want to move forward with the agreement. We just want to, we just want $1 million.
We need the gavel now.
yeah.
Again, who's getting bigger?
That's my question. It's like, oh, obviously,
It's a cost of $2 million, so yeah.
So,
but I mean, that seems a relatively unlikely.
I agree, which is why we even gambled doing the original PO.
so
We
the,
would need some sort of guarantee letter from the county saying that the funding would come our way regardless of anything. That's what we're going to work on next.
and we would only be doing this if we feel it's to our advantage. And the advantage to us is that right now, the tariff impact is less than 5%. And knows how it'll end up. And the other advantage is that the pricing that Sienna gave back in October, November, if we don't follow through on purchase order, then 2025 pricing kicks in. And that's probably 5% hit. So it could be, on a $2 million order, $100,000 to $200,000 premium if we wait.
We also don't wanna, I mean, we've been working with the county on the IRU, but we don't wanna just hand the IRU, he has to sign this today. We wanna give their attorney time to review it, it's a very lengthy document.
And we know all the
I know,
and more.
I know that, that's why I'm saying,
Appreciate that.
Is that?
it's just like a letter saying you'll pay.
Relative to the Connect, right? Because I know Connect.
That would be
Yeah.
icing, that would be icing on the cake. So all of this, if Connect All says we're eligible, the whole thing's covered
Okay,
by
that's
Connect
what,
All.
okay. But I mean, we still need to do this anyway.
So if with or without Connect All, we need to provide this service. It becomes a relative no-brainer to the city of Buffalo and to the city of Lackawanna to also use the managed network service if Connect All basically funds it for them. They may still want to do it without the funds, but it's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it was that, doing any of this and needing this equipment in general was contingent on the connect all,
Right.
I'd probably have more pause here.
Yeah, no,
And frankly, I almost think we shouldn't talk about connect all until it actually happens.
that was just a bonus.
The other advantage of getting it shipped is then we can start building our core in the Raft Data Center.
Mhm.
In August, September, get the backup core going at the same time, because the fiber, Cheektowaga to downtown, be coming online in the fall. And then we can start as we build out to all the PSAFs and towers, and county facilities, we can start putting in routers. I know you probably want to wait till we have subsets before you bring people on.
Not for the county's facilities, but for 911, yes.
But we can at least test to make sure everything's 100% ready before you get anything with your Verizon contract.
Plus, you're also able to sell to other potential customers in the area.
And they're actually a live network with it. Yeah. Those are the pluses. It's an unlikely negative, but who knows what the future holds. I think it's relatively low risk. Counties are sponsor. We have to get this done for the county. Make sure the county's happy.
There's no surprises in the eye. Everything we talked.
So
Where, just so I know, where is it in the, where is this document? It's got-
Andrew's preparing, yeah, Andrew's
Okay, you're in.
preparing the final version that's gonna go to you.
Okay, so.
You have, someone in your office has
It's-
seen it.
right now it's between Andrew, myself, and some of my colleagues.
Okay.
To make sure we're comfortable with all the.
Yeah. The county saw a version without the managed networks, piece in there.
I mean, I assume it's Rich Stan.
I think that draft can go out. If not this week, next week,
And then we'll get 8-9 minutes to review it.
if you're lucky days,
Well, you'll have to approve it before the 4th.
before the fourth, I got to prove it before the 30th.
You don't
If
have
you
to,
want an agreement,
unless you want to give us a letter that says you'll pay. Well,
I don't know if it's.
Yeah, great.
We're framing this as a
Sign from
resolution,
dotted line.
but certainly anyone has significant concerns on the risk of moving forward with the purchase order,
we just cancel it.
we should hear it now. Right now, we're inclined, I believe, to see this have the shift.
It's a significant savings at a very low risk that the county is not going to utilize ErieNet. And they have already verbally confirmed that they will be using the managed network system, which is also savings eventually to the county. It's just getting all of the attorneys in place.
Lawyers are usually.
Not ours. of
What's
course.
it? I completely agree.
It's very wordy. Words.
We're gonna talk about the board resolution with this New York State disposition notice, so I'm gonna let.
Well, we didn't actually, it's not actually a resolution. Well, we'll get to that in a
Right.
second.
Yeah, it actually, we took it off as a resolution, it's a discussion point. But I'll just finish up my. We talked about the city of Lackawanna meeting, close with the city of Buffalo, IRU agreement. And Nolan, I don't know what you're hearing from your side of the street. But I think where we're at is we'd like to meet. We could do it face to face, or we can do it through a webinar. But that way we get the issues addressed directly.
Yeah. Andrew's gonna,
Button this up.
you're requesting that meeting with the edits, right? Yeah. So when he's done with the edits, I'm requesting. We're getting there.
Melissa mentioned NFTA Light Rapid Rail. Tonawanda Water and Sewer has a significant project that I'll be speaking with them tomorrow. So they're looking identifying the resources to connect over a dozen of their facilities. So that it's a significant project for us. And we continue to wait on our affordable housing proposals. So the major initiatives right now.
One last thing I didn't mention in my time was the financials. So this was the first month that we took out significantly most of the reinvestment. So I can't remember what I think we took out 1.7 and reinvested 400,000. So we're starting to see, obviously, the bills are increasing as our construction increases. That's all good news, except on our return end. And we were below for the first time 4%. I think it was 3.9 on the interest rate. But it's still, I mean, that's if we kept it in there the entire time, I think we still made like $33,000. It's, where we were making hundreds of thousands at certain points, but that's okay.
We're counting on that money anyway, the interest money anyway, so.
We weren't, no.
But now we're seeing.
We're close to 3 million on it, so I think we're at like 2.6 or 2.7, so I mean, it's money we did not anticipate. So that's our report. I know we still have, but we have an agenda.
Okay. You want to touch on the board resolution or?
Oh, we can just wait, that's really. I just want, when we get to, the big discussion that we have is the audit, which is number 7.
Right, so moving on to number 4, there was no committee at this month, also no unfinished business. New business, so we can move on to number 7, the our private.
Okay, so I apologize. We had gotten the final audit report, but then there were some minor changes twice. So you received that twice. We have the new one in here. Andrew came today so that he can kind of discuss the audit and the purpose of it, because you had asked that. We did ask for the auditor to come in and he declined. He said to read the report. And so we have read the report several times, and Andrew is very familiar with the process since they requested it. So we're going to kind of talk about that. Before I let him go on, there were 4 resolutions that were going to be on here because we basically have an ABO requirement, which is why we had to do the audit. And Andrew's going to explain that process. So all of our deals are going to have to be approved. Contingent process, which will then put a 90-day added on to our deals. So I'll let Andrew go into that. But the next meeting, which is not going to be till August, which we'll talk about, you'll have your break in July. We'll have several resolutions for past approvals that we've done for agreements, and then a couple of new ones that are coming up.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you everyone for having me today. Glad to see all of you in person. So as Missy noted, so we did, it was actually, just to clarify, it was an appraisal.
Appraisal, I keep calling it an audit.
Nope, that's totally
I do not
fine.
know why I keep doing that, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, so just to kind of give everyone a little bit of background in terms of why the appraisal was requested. So as you all know, ErieNet is a public authority that's subject to the public authorities law. The many laws that ErieNet is obligated to comply with, there is a specific provision in the public authorities law related to dispositions of property by a public authority by negotiation as opposed to bid. As you're probably likely aware, for a lot of the services that ErieNet procures, it's subject to a bidding requirement depending on the value of those services. So in most instances, public authorities, when disposing of an interest in property, are required to dispose of that by an RFP and a competitive bidding process. And now there are certain instances where property of a public authority can be disposed of by negotiation instead of by a public bidding process. And of course, the disposal would have to meet certain requirements. In certain instances, the disposal would have to be within the mission purposes of the entity, or disposal to another public entity. And so mainly the impetus behind the creation of this section, which is 2897 of the Public Authorities Law, is to avoid the appearance of impropriety. You know, unfortunately, back in the day, there was certain public authorities where, you know, a board member or, you know, a small corporation would be conveying public authority property to their relatives and friends for $1, which of course was way below that value. So really the impetus behind this statute is just to encourage, you know, full disclosure of any of these dispositions that are, you know, being effectuated by negotiation. So as part of this process, you know, as I mentioned, there's certain statutory requirements that have to be met before property can be disposed of. And now, as defined in the statute, you know, an interest in property could be, you know, a fee simple interest, so conveying a parcel of land. It could be a lease of property of the public authority. And so the Harris Beach team has kind of been reviewing this statute very carefully in light of the proposed IRU agreements and licenses that ErieNet is eventually going to be negotiating on an individual basis with customers, and thereafter, you know, like leasing use of fiber. And so based on a review of the statute and the property interests that are going to be eventually granted to the customers, you know, it's our, you know, opinion that, you know, this statute would apply. And so, as Missy mentioned, you know, there's certain additional requirements that have to be undertaken with respect to the, you know, the procurement process and, you know, the approval of proposals.
Real quick, I just want to add in, Bob explained to us that he had a similar situation. They tried to avoid this process and it was declined by the ABO. And so that's why their opinion is that we won't have a choice, that we have to follow it. So, you know, we agreed based off of his, you know, past attempts that we're going to have to move through this process, which, as you'll hear, is kind of a pain in the butt.
Correct. Yes, and so it's mainly a procedural statute in terms of, you know, what will have to happen in terms of, you know, what the board will have to review and make determinations on. So in essence, in order to dispose of any property by negotiation, there is a requirement in the statute that an independent appraisal is obtained so that the fair market value of that property can be determined. And so if you take a look at the appraisal report that was included, and I know Missy had mentioned last week, we did review it with the appraiser, and, you know, there were a couple of items that needed to be updated there. So the idea is, you know, just a baseline fair market value needs to be established with respect to the property. Now, you know, whatever the fair market value is, that certainly wouldn't prevent, you know, ErieNet from potentially disposing of that property for less than fair market value. There would just need to be an additional level of review and board determination to review the effects and circumstances of that disposal. And so essentially what will need to happen is a notice will need to be sent in to the authority's budget office, and there's a few different entities that it needs to be sent to as well. And effectively the notice will just explain, you know, the disposition, who the parties are, what the property is disposed of, its fair market value. And effectively what that does is upon sending that 90-day notice to the authority's budget office, the 90-day period would need to lapse before ErieNet were to actually enter into an IRU or a license with that end user. Now, we do have language that's included in all of the IRUs and licenses at this point, which makes them contingent upon the lapse of that 90 days. So effectively, the agreement could be signed before that 90-day period expires, but we just wouldn't be able to grant those services until the 90-day period. And so from a proposal approval perspective, Missy had mentioned we had 4 resolutions, which we pulled from this month, but we'll re-examine in August, for the existing proposal that the board has already authorized, which will be solely for the purpose of just making determinations that are required under the statute. And then going forward, the understanding would be with each new proposal, we would include this procedural step in the authorizing resolution for that. So at the time the proposal is issued to the customer, we would prepare a notice, send it into the authority's budget office. And at that point, the 90-day period would start. Now, in most instances, it's just a notice. You know, the authority's budget office typically is not going to respond and say, you can't do this. It's just more so just to notify the relevant parties of the disposition.
And there's a situation, maybe we're going to say that, where if we're on a time crunch, you know, someone needs service, like we're up and running, someone needs service, 90 days would be something that would be prohibited to, their deal. We can have language in there, and we're considering probably doing that where it will be a license. And then after 90 days, it will be a lease. That makes sense?
Right.
They're only licensing it, and then when the 90 days is up, it becomes the lease, so that they can start the service prior to the 90 days.
Yeah, so we're still certainly, examining that specific fact pattern, but so just for example, so with respect to this statute, there's certain interest in real property to which it applies, one being, fee conveyance or lease, but licenses are not included in the scope of this. Now, as I mentioned, based on our review, and we took a look at, the composition of the agreement, rates being conveyed, we determined that we shouldn't be sending in these notices just as a matter of justice.
I have a question. I thought I understood what the disposal of property, right?
Mhm.
That's what this is. So walking in here, I thought I knew what disposal of property is. So how does what we're doing constitute disposal of this fiber? We're not disposing, we're hanging it.
Yeah, so
We're releasing it, we're
Right, so
using it, we're deploying it. We're not disposing of
Right, so but for the purposes of the statute, they consider a lease to be a disposal
Yeah,
of property.
Don't try and make sense.
it. No, I'm just,
So that's why the
I'm a bit dumbfounded because I am on boards that are releasing property and I've never heard this.
Yeah, so Bob went several different ways.
He said,
And so now and I guess I will clarify, and I didn't get into the actual
They're not
minutia.
public authority.
I didn't get into the actual minutia
Yeah,
of the statute. So for leases of property, there's certain thresholds that apply. So for example, and I'm just quoting, I'd have to look at the statute, but it typically for a lease to become subject to the statute, it would have to have like an annual rental value of about $15,000 per year over the term of the lease. And the property being disposed of would have to have a value of over $400,000. So it might not apply to every single type of disposition, but that's why we have to obtain the independent appraisal.
I can see it more on the record, but it's confusing.
So I will say that Bob tried several different angles. One, he has an example that matches pretty much what we're doing, and it was denied by the ABO, so they were then required to resubmit and do this process. The other was that he tried to make these licenses instead of leases, and that became too confusing and convoluted, I think. So we had to go back to where this was a lease, and when you call a lease, they consider that through this process, the statute, disposition of property.
It's arcane ABO language. People do not appreciate that what we're doing is leasing digital space on a physical item. They're turning it all into a physical item essentially, and it's quality.
The Southern Tier Network, all of this procedure.
They're not a public authority, I believe. They weren't set up as an
No,
authority.
there's a difference between,
Well, maybe they,
part of the
I don't know.
is there's a difference between a government entity and a public benefit. Right?
It's like a public authority that would be subject to.
Yeah, public,
There's a
so
slight difference
if it's
between us.
the government entity, it wasn't
No,
subject to
not
this, but we're
Right.
public development corporation, so that is subject to.
Yes, and I certainly understand that, this is a little bit confusing of a, conceptually, just from a statutory perspective, just because, the rights that ErieNet is going to be granting are very unique in the sense that, it's fiber cable, it's the use of the fiber cable. And so, for that reason, it was tricky to even be able to get an appraisal for the value of that property because it is so unique. And so, just in, the absence of being able to kind of fit ourselves into one bucket versus another in terms of, it's just as a best practice, it's better to just comply with the terms of the statute. As I mentioned before, it's mainly procedural in the sense that, this is going to be dovetailed into the proposal approval process. And it
Wouldn't it insert a 90-day delay into everything?
Well, the workaround for that is that it will be considered a license until the 90 days are up, and then it's a lease. Oh, I know, I mean, the frustration you're going through, we've already gone through that. Remember the first time you tried to explain this to you, I said, I don't know, it was a Bob requirement, I can't even explain it to you.
Specific.
You're in the first conversation, I said, I don't know why we need to have an appraisal, but it's Bob requirement, and we'll have someone.
It will have minimal impact on fiscal concerns.
generally these things take 90 days, to build it. Where it's gonna be an inconvenience, is with our private customers. And if, when we get to that point, the carriers, they're looking to, because
With the next one.
they don't like to wait 90 days.
Yeah, I would think so.
But we have a workaround.
Right, yeah, no, we're like Missy mentioned, you know, we're certainly paying very particular attention to this as we're starting to approach, you know.
We're selling it, disposing of it to someone else where we lose control of the asset. We're hanging it and making revenue on it.
But those caveats aren't written into the law and they have to follow. That's.
Yeah, Dan,
That's
I
just the follow
everything
statute.
it's scratched.
It's what it is.
It doesn't make sense.
It's always with the ABO, anyone who's done any of the like ABO reporting is you have to jam square pegs into round holes all the time with the ABO. Because even if they completely agree with your argument, there's nothing they can do about it. You have to comply with the laws the way the law is written. So a law change would be beneficial. But that's not something the ABO can do. That's something the state legislature would have to do. Then the ABO could no longer enforce said provision.
We'll add it to our list of things that laws need to change.
Yeah, I mean, it just, it is what it
The
is.
fiber and municipal broadband. But so, Andrew, did you have anything else to add?
I mean, no, that was pretty much it. I mean, if anyone has any, you know, questions, I'm happy to answer those. I know it's a little convoluted and confusing, so like I said, I'm happy to address any specific questions anyone might have.
So they were-
Internet exists.
We were gonna approve the 4 existing contracts today, but they wanna make sure that they're getting the language 100% correct, since it's a new process. So we pulled them and the 90 days won't affect, even if we wait till the August. So, you'll be seeing at least 4 previously approved deals, with the new language. We'll ratify those and then potentially, hopefully by then we'll have a few more that will have the new language on it in August. Good stuff. Thrilling.
Good with that?
I don't know.
No,
No, it's good. Why'd you ask that question?
It's good with it.
Silence falls across the room. No one wants to talk about it
Yeah,
anymore.
no, it just, it is what.
Yeah, get it right. Exactly.
All right, let's jump into this resolution here. Number 8. Resolution 2025-16. Resolution of the corporation authorizing the license agreement for space at Center Labs located at 701 Tower, City of New York. So,
So this is, where we're sitting right now. This is our lease. It went up a whopping $20 a month, so $240 for the year, which I thought was reasonable. We're keeping the same office, no change. And it does include they are still including the meeting space time, they don't have to be action for our regular meeting.
motion. Move. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstention? Our next meeting is to be determined.
No, not anymore. So it was at the time of print. We decided late yesterday that, everything can wait until August. So your summer recess will be the July meeting, which is good because the space is not available. And, we'll meet up in August, which is when the Audit and Finance Committee will have their first audit meeting as well. Or not audit, budget meeting. So we'll start the budget process in August as well. If you're on the Audit and Finance Committee, that will be at 1 and our regular meeting will be at 2 here. 20th, that was
19th.
Something like that, yeah.
19th.
Sure, if nothing else.
So moved.
Second.
Need to schedule that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, all in favor?
Oh, do you want